This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and Upsnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to come and free to go. Free to come and free to go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. I'm your host, SHERI HORN HASAN of Karmic Evolution Astrology, and I'm coming to you on November 4th, 2021 from Contact Talk Radio. Just a quick reminder, as always, that this show aims to bring you the truth about astrology and your soul's karmic evolution. Okay, I am solo again today. As usual, for the past couple of weeks, I've had a lot to say, so I'm going to say it. And I will be getting back to having guests on the show for those of you who missed that and are getting tired of listening only to me, but I do appreciate your listening, so thank you for being here. First, as usual, you can listen to Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking, anytime by going to my website at karmicevolution.com and clicking on the upper right-hand banner label radio show. From there, you can also scroll down the page and hear the most recent show. You can catch it live, like right now, or you can listen to the archived recording after the fact. You can also, on that page, search the archived listing for any past shows that you might have missed or that you want to listen to again. Separately, you can follow me on my Facebook page at Karmic Evolution for Your Soul, where you can also sign up for my Conversations About Consciousness newsletter as well. And finally, I'm offering still my 1-hour discounted Karmic Evolution Natal Insight Reader to listeners only for $99. And this reading is for those who want to gain greater consciousness about your soul's true mission and purpose in this lifetime. Often it's not exactly what we may be thinking. For those who want to move from chaos to clarity through astrological insight about your relationships, your career, your finances, or your health. Or for those who want to heal old karmic wounds and co-create your own future happiness and success by moving past them and creating new, better future karma. Or if you want to awaken to your true potential and highest destiny in this lifetime, which is a bit synonymous with discovering your true purpose and mission. Now, all this is easy when you take advantage of my special discounted offer, as I said, for listeners only. I don't advertise this anywhere else. It's a 1-hour Karmic Evolution Natal Insight reading for only $99. If you're interested and game, simply email me at SHERI, that's SHERI, at karmicevolution.com, and we'll get your reading booked today. At almost half the regular price, conscious awareness has never been so easy or so affordable. Okay, so now let's get into this week's Astro News you can use. We're in what's known right now as the balsamic dark of the moon lunar phase until the Scorpio New Moon hits at 2:15 p.m. Pacific and 5:15 p.m. Eastern today, November 4th. And hold on one second because I neglected to give you the degrees. The moon will meet up with the sun in Scorpio at 12 degrees, 40 minutes of Scorpio. And this lunation, which I'm going to go into in a few minutes, is also going to almost exact oppose Uranus and Taurus at 12 degrees, 47 minutes. And they are all just past, or, well, you know, Saturn has been waxing in and out of square with Uranus, so he's starting to move towards it again. But the two luminaries are going to be just past an exact opposition to Uranus. So before we go forward, and as I usually like to do, let's take a step or two back. I never think it's a bad thing to just remind people of the larger energies in play. So we know that at the last Aries full moon, and I've mentioned this the past couple of weeks, I acknowledge that, but I still think it's important to remember, and the last Aries moon from October 20th asked us to release that which holds us back from our future transformational growth. So assuming we made some progress in doing that, that space, which was formerly filled with resistance, can now become the ground into which we plant new seeds at today's Scorpio New Moon. So what we saw at the last Aries full moon, when the Aries moon conjoined with Eris, the goddess of discord and chaos, to oppose the Libra Sun and Mars combination, while they all squared Pluto and Capricorn, was, I really now believe, a turning of the wheel moment. So as usual, if we look at this in terms of what's come at us from the collective, and I'm talking long term here, especially since Uranus's ingress into Taurus in the spring of 2018, we can see the changes that have erupted into the collective since then. And from the advent of the coronavirus in early 2020 or late 2019, however you want to look at it, I mean, it certainly hit us here in the States full force, especially in the Northeast, by the beginning of, by February, March of 2020. And the super fast virality of mis and disinformation as it flies across the internet at supersonic speed, to the protests and social unrest after last year's murder of George Floyd and the subsequent post-2020 presidential election big lie fallout in the form of the passage of restrictive voting bills in, 43 states, to the nasty fights during local school board meetings over masking mandates in school, and so much more. I'm just scratching the surface here. The change in our daily lives, routines, relationships, jobs, living spaces and locations, and more have all undergone significant shifts, most of them unexpectedly. So when we add Pluto and Capricorn's on again, off again exact square to the goddess of discord and chaos, Eris and Aries, which has been going on all year, we can see more long-term effects of how Capricorn business as usual has been thrust into disarray, particularly on the work front, which Capricorn is very much related to, right? Hard work. And in terms of school and parenting, Capricorn's about responsibility, being the authority figure as a result of the pandemic or the proliferation of the coronavirus. So the chaos wrought by Eris in action-oriented Mars-ruled Aries, where, by the way, Aries goes through a sign so slowly, it takes almost 100 years to go through Aries. And this has caused changes, many of them sudden and focused on practical routines as per Uranus and Taurus, as they pertain to business and usual, but they've wrought, like I said, all of this chaos. Now, of course, I use these examples, as any of my regular listeners know, not to get steeped in the politics, but to help everyone recognize the as above, so below nature of astrology. Once that becomes clear, that there's a kind of cause and effect between the movement of the planets in the heavens and the occurrences here on Earth, we can then move on to as within, so without. But for now, let's stick to the fact that what we see going on in the macrocosm of the collective is often an indication, a sign, if you will, of what may well be going on in our own lives, simply on a different scale or on a different level. So wider events serve as a mirror into the events happening in our own lives, depending, of course, on how directly our individual charts are being hit by these astrological energies at any given moment in time. All right, so let's get back to this upcoming lunation. It's pretty clear now that what the Aries full moon asked us to release was our resistance to taking action. Because the Libra Sun and Mars at that time preferred to negotiate and compromise rather than fight, so great is its desire for peace and harmony that it sacrificed its Aryan instinctive will. Aries doesn't think, it acts or reacts. I've explained this before, but Aries is in tropical Western astrology, rules the ascendant in everyone's chart. The wheel starts with the seasons, and the first season is spring. And when the baby is ready to be born, he doesn't think about it. He just signals physically to the mother, whatever the chemical reaction is. I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I don't know. But he signals in utero to the mother, dude, it's time to let me out. There isn't much thought or rational logic involved in it. And so out the baby comes, hopefully most of the time in a healthy, happy state. Now, what we just saw yesterday with the final tallies of two super important gubernatorial races. Now, of course, I'm bringing in politics here, right? So bear with me for a few. These races in Virginia and New Jersey, and I live in New Jersey, so trust me, I was paying attention, was the ability of one group to take into account that its inaction could cause them an election. Again, I'm not taking sides here, though I do think regular listeners know my political persuasions are pretty clear, but I'm simply pointing out how Democrats are now receiving strong criticism for not having passed Biden's two bills, the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill, prior to these elections, because it would have given the candidates a platform to run on by saying, look, this is what we can help do here too. And so by not getting these bills passed, by continuing to negotiate, trying to compromise, bringing down the cost of the bill. I mean, I'm not pro or con either way on that. I'm not advocating for one or the other, but it's gone on too long, the universe was saying, okay? And so as a result, what happens is, because at that last lunation, there was a certain complacency, because Libra energy believes there's a solution to every problem, and that this solution lies with making both parties a little bit happy and a little bit unhappy, rather than leaving just one super happy and the other sad, mad, or disgruntled for the future. Libra doesn't like that. Libra wants everything to be copacetic, wants balance, wants fairness, wants justice. Okay, you give a little, okay, you give a little, now we come to meet in the middle, right? Now, normally, this is a very positive attribute of Libra archetypal energy. Many people make their living as mediators, whether it's in the legal field, the psychological field, the medical field. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And again, that's the high side of Libra archetypal energy, but not when the Aries moon at the Aries full moon tried to point out that there can be flaws inherent in its polar opposite archetypal energy. So the cry from the heavens then was to do something that indicates action, motion, and or fighting back. Taking off the gloves would be a good metaphor here, even if it's simply an illustration that somebody means business. Put up your dukes, right? That's what we used to say when we were little on the playground, which probably came from like Popeye or one of those old cartoons. I don't remember. But sticking to the old ways of doing business, especially with Pluto in the waning years of his transit through Capricorn, where he's been since November 2008, and he will begin to leave when he dips his toe into Aquarius in March 2023. Though, as I've said before, he's going to retrograde back and forth between Aquarius and Saturn for that full year until early 2024. This old way of doing business doesn't cut it anymore. This lunation told us there has to be evolutionary growth of, or we are going to succumb to forces greater than ourselves. And that our Achilles heel may well be sticking to the older traditional Saturnian gentleman's way of compromise rather than confrontation, right? Well, I said Saturnian because Saturn's about tradition and respect and things like that. But in reality, that might not really be wholly appropriate because I think there's a lot of resistance here too. Well, it's Saturn, it's Capricorn, it's Taurus, it's Virgo. They don't like change. So and again, Uranus in Taurus doesn't like change. So Uranus says, well, the more you resist change, for the longer you resist change, the more there is a need for change. So Uranus comes in and says, boop, let's change. Okay, you waited too long. I'm tired. I'm out of patience. You know what? You know how that feels like, right, Taurus? When you get out of patience, you blow. Well, I'm joining your club. So it brings about unexpected events that say change is necessary whether you like it or not. And Pluto does much the same thing as well. So with so much stymied at this time, as we're leading up to today's Scorpio New Moon, along with the energy of the Scorpio Sun and Moon opposite Uranus and Taurus. Now, the Sun perfects its opposition just after the exact new moon, and the Moon just before. So they're virtually very close together, which is the norm. Well, that doesn't always happen. This is a very tight opposition. We've already seen the shock and surprise of yesterday's election results, depending, of course, on your political bent. Now, I've said before that Uranus rules in modern astrology. Well, it traditional astrology as well. It rules the 11th house, and in mundane astrology, the 11th house is the legislature. So there's no surprise that the Sun and Moon's opposition to Uranus might have had an effect on an election, right? Now, the governor's races were the tightest races and the most important ones. This is not a presidential election year, but many of the political pundits are looking at the results of this election as a bellwether for 2022, when we will be having the midterm elections. So, and traditionally the midterm elections will bring in more of the party that's not in the majority. And since the Democrats are in majority right now, they are starting to panic based on the results of this election. So let's take a look at the Scorpio New Moon with this context in the back of our minds and what it's offering us. So first of all, what does Scorpio represent archetypally? What kind of seeds are we supposed to plant now? Now, the Scorpio archetypes, some of the key words that if you've ever studied astrology or basic astrology, the key word is transformation. So the Scorpio archetype's about transformational change. Why? To ensure that we have the strength and the courage to adapt to changing circumstances and thereby guarantee our future survival. And when external scorpionic change comes upon us, it behooves us all to recognize that such shifts represent the kind of internal transformation necessary to evolve, again, in order to assure our future existence. If we take this example onto the political level, as I am wont to do, anyone who's been paying attention can see that since Donald Trump, there's been great lamenting about the demise of the Republican Party here in the U.S. Now, I don't think I have to go too deeply into this, but remember, again, that Pluto's been squaring your Aries and that she's the goddess of chaos and discord, right? And that's been going on off and on for a while. So why wouldn't we all have confusion about which way to go in order to evolve in our own lives? So the key here, as far as I'm concerned, lies with our ability to adapt. Now, without adaptation, and I know I've said this before, and for some of you it may seem repetitive, but I stress how important it is. Without adaptation, we won't make it. Mother Nature has proven this time and time again through the act of making extinct that which is incapable of adapting to its environment. So we needn't look askance at this statement that without adaptation, we ain't going to make it. Instead, we can accept it as proof based on what we know about the world around us. And the key here is that if we've given up resistance to evolutionary change since the last Aries full moon on October 20th, we can now plant seeds that allow us the strength, the will, the instinct to adapt. And when we adapt to current circumstances, whether they're environmental, physical, emotional, spiritual, or what have you, we guarantee our own survival. Because Scorpio is the sign most representative of the deep inner transformation necessary to adapt to external changes in order to ensure long-term survival. This Scorpio new moon asks us to plant seeds that will blossom into the kind of self-empowerment that allows us to expend the energy to engage in the adaptation process. All right. And that empowers us, right? What does it empower us to do? It empowers us to survive. Now, you know, Scorpio says true empowerment is having the courage of your convictions to be able to stand up and say, I'm a survivor. He's not worried yet about thriving, just about making it through this period of adaptation with certainty. You know, it brings up for me, I edited anthologies of short memoir stories by women, one of which was dealt with health, right? So a lot of people told stories, they were cancer survivors. And what comes into my mind when I talk about this topic in this way, saying I'm a survivor, is people with health issues, right? So a lot of us who've been diagnosed with different things, including cancer, but not only, have had our lives changed, but we understand what kinds of adaptations we've had to make in order to continue to survive, and then hopefully to get to the place where we've accepted we had to make those adaptations. And from that point, then we can begin to go back to thriving, right? So Scorpio's got this very, very deep. Scorpio is also a hugely regenerative power. This is akin to saying if you take a worm, like some of us watched our fourth grade teachers do out in the garden when they took us behind the school, and cut a worm in half to explain that the worm will then grow back. Two different worms now will grow. The one worm cut in half will regenerate into two different worms because it'll grow back the rest of its body, which when you're in fourth grade seems pretty freaking amazing, right? So Scorpio energy says, listen, you adapt and you make the necessary change and it will regenerate you. But what it is regenerating is our own sense of our own true power, right? Because, I mean, that's pretty freaking good, right? Like if someone cuts off half your body and you can grow the rest of it back. I mean, you know, people who have a lot of scorpionic energy do tend to recover. Now, I'm not saying this is a blanket statement that everyone was, you know, who's a Scorpio or whatever. And when I say scorpionic energy, I don't necessarily mean only a Scorpio moon, only a Scorpio sun, or only a rising. It's people who have aspects from some of their major planets to Scorpio or in the 8th house, etc. So, or angles in Scorpio. So what I'm trying to say is that planting these seeds now under a Scorpio new moon can lead us not only to adapt so that we survive, so that eventually we can thrive, but also to regenerate, okay? And again, the regeneration is adaptation. If you lose something and something new grows back, right, then, you know, you're going to become whole again. Scorpio archetype also has a connotation with wholeness. Now, because we know at this lunation, both the Scorpio moon and sun oppose Uranus and Taurus, which I mentioned at the beginning. And we know that Uranus and Taurus is about learning that wherever we waited too long to make necessary changes for our future growth, we may be forced, or shall I say shocked, into making these changes regardless. It makes sense that something has to jar us out of any complacent thinking, we need to be jarred out of any complacent thinking that we can remain the same, yet continue to evolve in a healthy, adaptive way. So the monkey wrench thrown into today's Scorpio new moon is, and has already proven to be, because it's been waxing in strength over the past few days prior to the exact lunation and the Scorpio sun's and moon's exact opposition to Uranus. And I said this before, but I have here that the sun will the moon exact opposes Uranus just prior to the lunation, and the sun perfects it about 2.5 hours after the lunation. I think that's correct, but hang on. Let me double, triple check because I hate giving out the wrong information. No, the lunation occurs, like I said, I'm going to give you the East Coast time, 5:15 p.m. The moon opposes Uranus exact at 5:26 p.m. and the sun opposes Uranus exact at 7:58 p.m. I know I have some Virgo-oriented listeners, so I love giving out all those details. So I hope you appreciate that. But anyway, it's pretty rapid, right? Sometimes we have a lunation where, say, the sun is opposing an opposition or a square to Uranus, but it doesn't occur for 2 or 3 days. So the energy is still very strong. But here it's like just, very short time before it actually exacts. And to me, that means that the energy was pretty strong and beginning to gather strength on Tuesday and Wednesday when we had these elections. And so everybody knows by now who's either checked the front page of their paper or listened to any of their favorite stations, whether it's television, cable, radio, Facebook, whatever, that the Republican took what's his name? He beat McAuliffe. It just slipped my mind, but you guys know who I'm talking about. That he beat the governor of Virginia. He beat Terry McAuliffe was the former governor of Virginia who couldn't run again because they had term limits. So Northam became the governor, and now this election, McAuliffe was running again. But it's kind of like the surprise was that the Republican who the Democrats tried to link to Trump seems to have successfully managed not to be so tightly linked to him, and therefore he just won the race, but it was still a pretty tight race. And in New Jersey, it took until last night, again, sun opposite Uranus waxing, for the winner to be announced. And here the Republican's name is Chitterelli, and Phil Murphy, it was the incumbent. Now, just before airtime, just now, today, and again, because I live in New Jersey, I just saw a local patch news piece. So last night they declared Murphy the winner. And I believe at that time there was less than half a percentage point between them. And already Chitterelli had begun to say something or make murmurings about some kind of fraud. But just before airtime, I got a local patch news piece saying that because of some kind of glitch, 56 districts in Essex County, New Jersey, were shut down without being counted first. Surprise! Now, since Essex contains portions of Newark, Irvington, Maplewood, Montclair, Southwest, and Orange, just Orange, plain old Orange, as well as more affluent Milburn and a few other places, it remains to be seen if these counties skew left or right. But what was interesting is that before this happened, On the day of the election on Tuesday, again, Uranus, the sun waxing closer to an exact opposition to Uranus, but not there yet. The ACLU and the Women's League of Voters filed a lawsuit asking the judge to grant the ability to keep the voting polls open for another hour and a half. The polls in New Jersey were to close at 8, and they asked the judge to keep them open to 9:30. And the reason for that is because some polls around the state had delayed openings. And some of that, Uranus, was due to technology. New Jersey was using a new kind of e-vote tracker. There's another word for it. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but by which people could cast their votes. And this equipment was brand new and therefore apparently untested. So some polling places were delayed by up to 3 hours. Now, the judge denied the request, saying there wasn't any proof that it had affected people. But people were being turned away from the polls initially and told to come back later. So nobody knows if those people came back later or not, or if they waited or whatever. So that's interesting. Sun Uranus thing number 1, and Sun Uranus thing number 2 is how interesting it is that these votes are now being identified as having been uncounted. So again, the race was a squeaker, with Murphy reportedly pulling ahead, like I said, with only about 1/2 of 1 percentage point. And these new votes might make a difference. So hold on to your Uranian hats, because this report also says that a judge is needed to decide whether they can open up these voting machines now to recover the lost ballots. And that can also prove more fodder for the GOP candidate Chitterelli to claim fraud, which, like I said, he's already begun to do. So, oy vey, right? I mean, hello. How many more monkey wrenches of the unexpected kind are we going to see? Now, the message, which is ringing through the collective now, again, using U.S. politics as the mirror into which we may all gaze, is clear. Adapt or die. While much has been made about the death, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, of the Republican Party here since the Trump years, as it morphs ever more into a post-Trump right-wing entity, I don't think enough attention has been paid, at least until Tuesday's election and the fallout yesterday and today, about how the Democrats have not adapted to these changes. And what I mean is that, yes, it's clear to any observer that the current GOP is not at all the same one that grew into existence during the Reagan and Bush years. Yes, both Bushes, but rather a far less inclusive party, and one that holds a much greater us against them attitude. The Democrats, however, have plodded along Libra style, believing they can negotiate and compromise away any crazy stuff that might be blocking them. And again, the Aries full moon called for evolutionary change via adaptation here. Many progressives had urged their party to fight back, kill the filibuster in order to pass a voting rights bill, so that we can fight back against the state's legislative attacks on voting rights. As I mentioned, 43 states with something like 400 separate bills, some of which went into effect at this election on Tuesday. Use of reconciliation as a means of bill passage for the infrastructure bills, which they are already doing. Holding one infrastructure bill hostage to another, which is in progress now, which is why these candidates across the country, not only the 2 gubernatorial ones, but others couldn't use, on the Democratic side, couldn't use the accomplishments that have been made since Biden's been in office as leverage to gain them voters to vote them into office. Now, all of these things may not prove to have positive results. The point is that if one side recognizes the adaptation that the other side has made, and that this adaptation has resulted in no ability to any longer achieve a compromise negotiation. This is something in Congress we've seen for the last few years, and all one needs to recognize is the name Mitch McConnell. then the other side must adapt or pivot its strategy. If not, the result is the logjam we've been seeing in Congress, mirrored also in the collective by logjams elsewhere, such as in the delivery of goods stuck along our port shores, right? They're completely different issues, but they're logjams nonetheless. So tomorrow, November 5th, Venus enters Capricorn, where she takes her obligations and duties within relationships seriously. And this becomes an important transit because the goddess of beauty, love, and relating, as in relationships, remains in serious, responsible Capricorn until March 6th of 2022. And that's because on December 19th of this year, she'll station retrograde at 26 degrees, 29 minutes of Capricorn and move back to 11 degrees, 7 minutes of that sign before stationing direct again on January 29th of 2020 when she moves forward again in Capricorn. So this is a topic for a future show, which I mentioned last week, but understand that her entrance into Capricorn now calls us to become serious about our relationships. Are we getting from them what we're putting into them? Given the current astro energies, it would seem that any plea to negotiate to find a peaceful compromise that's resisted must now be taken as a no, you're not getting back what you're putting in or putting out. Therefore, it's a time between now and March 2022, but particularly through the Venus retrograde period, which I just named, to review where exactly does any imbalance lie in our partnerships. With the strikes abounding around both the nation and the world, and since Venus can represent money and Capricorn business, it's conceivable there may be some negotiations that take place in terms of workers' rights. This is also stuff that's been brewing, especially since Uranus entered Taurus back in 2018. We're also mindful that deadlines have both been met and are still looming for different companies to ensure federal vaccine requirements are met. If one refuses, one's out of a job in many cases. So Venus in Cap doesn't fool around. It's get serious or get out. That's the message that she carries. Venus is about values. And if our partners, whether personal, business, spiritual, or whatever, can't hold up their end of the bargain, it's going to be time to say goodbye. And we should remember that any space created by letting go of someone or something can now be filled in the future by someone or something better because it's more conducive to our future growth. And I always mean growth in consciousness. It's important to know as well that when Venus stations retrograde, what happens is Venus meets up with Pluto in Capricorn about a week before she stations retrograde. And this is going to add another layer of intensity, perhaps with a particular focus on money, especially joint resources at that time. And these two will meet up again in late February of 2022. So file this away for now, and we'll talk more about it later. But just remember, adaptation's still the name of the game, especially now at this Scorpio New Moon, as the Fed begins to ease its financial contribution to slowing economic losses, which it began during the pandemic. And we may all find ourselves confronting things like higher interest rates in the not too distant future. I know I'm digressing a bit here or moving around a little, but I just wanted to get in all of my thoughts. So this is something to keep an eye on if you're a homeowner, a seller, or a buyer, for example, if you're in the market. So I'm just saying. Now, at the same time, on November 5th, Mercury slides into Scorpio as well. Here, he may uncover more secrets or create more secrets. This combo of archetypal energies can be somewhat obsessive. So watch out for overthinking or that hamster wheel stuff that can keep us awake all night going round and round in our brains without any solution in sight. On the other hand, deep research, fact-finding missions, attention to information that can lead to a transformative outcome are all welcome now. Bear in mind, however, that all astrological energies should be deemed on the surface to be neutral, and that they can play out in all different ways within their archetypal realm. Now, Mercury at its most neutral, one of the biggest things it represents is communication. So communication can be a moving speech that urges millions of people into positive action, or it can take the form of propaganda and the manipulation of masses into believing gossip and or things that have no basis in fact. You know, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. Pluto is about empowerment, but people who are disempowered seek to control others because they're insecure about how much control and how much power they actually have over their own lives. So instead of doing the hard work, they take the easy route and they just try to threaten and cajole and manipulate others. Say no more, right? Now, Mercury sextiles Venus, both of them newly in Scorpio and Capricorn, respectively, on November 6th. And we've the opportunity to rest or take a break from the heaviness of today's lunation's intensity, especially in the aftermath of the Sun-Moon opposition to Uranus. After all, adaptation and evolution isn't exactly a carefree endeavor and certainly doesn't happen either easily or overnight. But this sextile provides us the opportunity to get in greater touch with our emotions and to voice them more easily. Verbalizing feelings of love and appreciation should come more easily now and can begin begin us down the road towards or set the tone for the long-term Venus and Capricorn transit or road ahead. Now, that's November 6th, but between now and November 10th, because November 10th, by the 10th is the day we want to better understand now in terms of processing anything that happens between now and then. And that's because Mercury and Mars will unite in Scorpio, and both will square Saturn and Aquarius that day. So between now and then, arguments may hit the national or world stage, or they may hit your kitchen, right? Because Mercury conjunct Mars requires restraint, lest we fly off the handle in a sudden fit of pique, which often causes us not to choose our words wisely, to say the least. Irritation, agitation, frustration. This can provoke an argument, as Mars is an ego-oriented energy. And remember, Mars' mission really traditionally is to support our natal sun. And the natal sun represents our persona. And every persona possesses an ego. Because without the ego, I don't think we'd be able to survive. So ego isn't bad, but too much ego, well, you get where I'm going, I'm sure. So this particular Mercury-Mars conjunction asks us to choose our battles wisely to ensure where we may really have to defend ourselves in order to maintain our own integrity and to speak or argue only about that which truly concerns us. On the level of the collective, watch for more acting out, where people frustrated by issues such as low wages, job losses, slow goods delivery, not to mention more horrific things like deaths due to the pandemic, etc., cause them to scream and shout about unrelated issues such as mask and vaccine mandates and stuff like that. Remember, a lot of this may well simply be directed anger or misdirected anger instead of dealing with the bottom line cause of one's anger and lashing out at inappropriate targets like schools, none of which, you know, actually, I mean, God, what is the guy's name from Virginia? Why am I drawing a blank? Hold on one second, because I'm going to go crazy. So you got to bear with me for 1 second. What's his name? All right. I'm looking for a headline so I can just see it. Hello. You guys are all going, it's so-and-so, it's so-and-so, silly. Don't be so silly. All right, well, I can't find his name, but it's bugging me. It's a K, isn't it? Maybe I'm getting senile. Hello. All right, whatever. Now I can't find it. Something with a K. But anyway, hang on. Hang on. I'm determined now. Glenn Youngkin, no R. I was totally wrong. Okay, cool. So Youngkin campaigned by telling all of the people who are concerned about what's taught in their children's school. He said that he was going to prevent all the schools in the state from being able to teach critical race theory. Now, not one school not one school all the way through the college level teaches critical race theory. So he campaigned on a very, Mercury Scorpio thing, because it's like he's telling you that he's going to prevent something from happening, which doesn't happen. Anyway, the point is that the Mercury conjunction to Mars starts to set the tone early on the 10th of November for Mercury square to Saturn. And while this aspect is good for hard mental work or tasks, it can be problematic because our communication can be marred now through being misunderstood. This isn't a good time for contract signing or business negotiations, which in fact may be delayed due to the slow nature of Saturn. However, if we think practically now and not negatively, because this aspect can cause negative thinking, depression, I'm no good, whatever, and discourage us, then we can stay the course. But the big one is that following that, Mars squares Saturn later on the 10th. And this is a caution to us to take it slow and easy and not be pushed into frustrating altercations with others. Because again, Mercury square Saturn has this tendency to feel misunderstood or isolated. So if we feel misunderstood or isolated, and then Mars squares Saturn, then we get pissed off, right? So again, things we want to get done may well be delayed. Mars is action, Saturn deliberation. So we all benefit if we cool our jets and not let our egos get too much in the way now. The thing to watch out for here, however, is the buildup of frustration between now and then, because Mars square Saturn can result in our taking our frustrations or anger out on inappropriate targets. This is classic. Liz Green writes about this in depth in her book, Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. This energy is tantamount to having to take crap from your boss all day long and not be able to fight back. And at the end of the week, going home and screaming at your partner or your kids as though they've been the ones causing the major portion of your frustration and anger. So one solution to this energy is to find an exercise routine or hard concentrated work you can do now in order to let off steam physically. Mars is a physical planet. It works every time. So take a walk, a jog, a swim, do your yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, kickboxing, or whatever else you've enjoyed doing physically, even dancing. There's a million things. So, you can't name them all, but whatever whatever you gravitate towards, to release some of that martial energy in a fashion that's less detrimental to harboring the frustration internally and then suddenly letting it blow. It pays to be mindful also that Mars is moving toward another square to Jupiter in Aquarius. And this isn't going to happen until December 8th. So I'm just giving you a heads up. But that's an explosive energy. I believe it was a year ago in June, so probably like a year and a quarter back from now, when Mars, I don't remember if it opposed or squared, but I think it squared on the other side. It was a waxing square when the Beirut warehouse blew up. This is a time when it's not uncommon to see explosions, to see earthquakes, to see fireworks of some kind that happen in various different places in the world, depending on their charts. But again, it can represent on a more mundane level stuff kind of blowing up in our own lives. So again, we'll talk more about that, but I think, Mars doesn't like to wait. So these are all building energies and building tensions. Now, I thought I might mention in the last couple of minutes, because we only have a few minutes left, is that I noticed that the Scorpio New Moon falls into Joe Biden's chart smack on his 12th house Mars in Scorpio, which is currently being opposed by transiting Uranus. And of course, that's Saturn that's, waxing in back into its square with Uranus, which will perfect on December 24th. So when he makes that final third and final exact square to Uranus, when Saturn makes that final square on December 12th, both will be waxing into a T square to Biden's natal Mars, but the sun and the moon are on his Mars now, right? And that means that Mars will be making his return, okay? And that's the day he's going to make a Mars return to Biden's Mars. Hold on, let me get the chart up here because that's what I wanted to do. Oh, that's not the chart. Hold on. Boy, glitches today. Oh, well, it's the sun opposite Uranus. What else? What else can I say? Here he is. Okay. So Joe Biden, who was born on November 20th of 1942 at 8:30 a.m. in Scranton, Pennsylvania, he has got this lunation exact on his 12-degree, 25-minute Mars on the cusp of his 12th house. So essentially it's in there. And that Mars squares his natal Pluto at 7 degrees Leo. So what's happening is this lunation is falling directly on his Mars, being opposed by Uranus or opposing Uranus, right? Those are the energies in the sky, but they're catching his Mars square Pluto in that energy. All right. And Mars square Pluto is a pretty explosive energy too. The thing that worries me here, and then I'm going to have to stop because of time constraints, is that he's also got a very tight square natally between Mars and Hygeia, which is the feminine Greek goddess of health and healing. So she's at 1331, Mars is at 1235, and she's in Leo and conjunct his 730 something degree and minute Pluto in Leo. Now, Hygeia, well, those who know Biden's history, and I'm not going to go into it, but just in general, know he's suffered a lot of losses, right? Transformation through health-related issues. In most recent history, he lost his son to a brain tumor, but prior to that, of course, at his Saturn return approximately, when he first won his first election to be a U.S. senator, his wife and baby infant daughter died in a tragic, sudden car accident. So something here is being triggered. I mean, at the best, what we would say is that this guy's got the guts or the balls to create transformation to our health system, right? And at the worst, that he himself has incurred great sorrow and pain and a great deal of frustration around transformation of health to those he loves, right? So let me just see if I had anything else I wanted to say about that, because I did. But yeah, I think the transiting Mars, this is going to build in strength, I believe. And we've got the Taurus full moon on November 19th, which of course I'll talk more about next week, because that's a pretty explosive energy too. So what I like least about this waxing energy is that Biden has a natal square, like I said, between his 12th house Mars and Hygeia and Pluto. And, because Hygeia is involved, this could be related to his own health. Now, a lot of astrologers have predicted things about health from many politicians, especially Donald Trump, especially during his presidency, and they have not panned out. And I'm by no means a medical astrologer, but I'm simply pointing out what I see here. So should anything happen with his health, it could be as a result of this lunation triggering his Mars and the fact that he's having a Mars return, which occurs every 2 years for each of us in our charts. So in any case, keep that in mind, you know, and we will hope for the best. So having said all that, I had a few other things to say, but let's see what happens next week. We'll take another quick look at his chart and see what, you know, if and what has actually happened, particularly related to his passage of this soft infrastructure or a human infrastructure bill, which would impact the financial, Pluto, and health, financial and physical health, Hygeia, of people in a proactive way. All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found the information that I presented here helpful as you continue your karmic evolution in this lifetime. Please be sure to join me next week, November 11th, for another episode of Karmic Evolutions, Astrologically Speaking. Until then, may your journey be filled with karmic healing and the joy of greater consciousness. Namaste.
Long ago, before this day's confusion did begin, throughout the stars did we go wandering. Distance was no barrier, and time it had no hope. Free to go